Hey, what's up? This is Kev from the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast, and you're listening to the BS Podcast Network. Enjoy the show.
In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
I'll tell you one thing, it's always better when we're together. It's always better when we're together. Yeah, we'll look at them stars and we're together. Well, it's always better when we're together. Yeah, it's always better when we're together.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Thursday. It is November 2nd, and this is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Cotillo. I have with me one Mr. Sal Lito. Just one Sal Lito tonight.
There are three of us. But,
We've had two on before.
We have. Yes, we have.
So,
and this one is chewing on pizza. He promised you he wouldn't
and yet
while we were recording, but yet I still have a piece in my mouth. You know, it's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess these things happen. When Steve's not here to regulate us, we tend to fly off the rails quickly. So,
Kevin, we're going to get to some news tonight, but I just got an update literally as we came on the air that Pierre Garcon is out for this season due to a recent neck injury he sustained.
Whoa. So is that breaking news here on the FLAFFL Podcast? That
literally came through as you started the intro. That just happened. Holy cow.
Wow. So he is out for, are you saying the season?
Done for the season with a neck injury.
Wow, that is unbelievable. I see an update at 7 o'clock that he missed practice, but then we hear this. Man, obviously we're getting this news as it comes out, and for you people listening, this will be old news, but what are your thoughts on that? I know you were a big Garcon guy coming into the season, and it hasn't really panned out for him, mostly terrible quarterback play, but I think a lot of people were hoping to be able to insert him into their lineups during the fantasy playoffs, because Jimmy Garoppolo would be there, and obviously that's an upgrade. So what are you thinking now as far as these people that just lost Pierre Garcon? You must be one of them. I'm sure you have him in a lot of places.
I have him in a few places. In the main FLAFFL league, I actually just traded him about 2 weeks ago. The player I got back was Jordan Reed, so right now both of us are without the player that we traded for. But it's a shame because he's had good games. He hasn't had a great game. He's had very good games. He's given you steady, low-end wide receiver 2 numbers in PPR leagues, maybe 3 to a flex, but he's been a somewhat reliable guy. Yeah, I think that everybody thought when Garoppolo got in there and got adjusted, maybe he'd be the guy down a stretch in the playoffs. I don't know what this means. Maybe Garoppolo doesn't even play this year at this point. Maybe they just say, hey, this season's a lost cause. We got our guy. Let's let him work on some things this year and then get in there next year. I mean, I really don't know, but it has been devastating what has gone on this year in fantasy football. It's like unlike anything I can remember in the 25 years that I've played this game.
Yeah, it's been a pretty brutal season all around, and I don't know if you saw this, we were talking in one of our league chats earlier today, where some of the guys were talking about the lack of practices being a factor as far as the injuries and thinking whether or not they've gone up as a result of the changes to the CBA and the limited amount of times these guys put on pads in preseason. Do you think that that's a possibility? Do you think these guys need to hit each other a little more?
I don't know. I don't know that I subscribe to that theory. I think that when it comes down to a neck injury is a neck injury. So how that was sustained, I don't even know yet. So that could be from the way he was hit. But we're going to get to the DeShaun Watson news today. Obviously, we know he tore his ACL and he's out for the season. It was non-contact. Dalvin Cook out this year, non-contact. Those are young guys. You can't get any younger than rookies. And it's happened with so many other guys. I really think that today's athletes are so in shape. Like, they're so tight. Their bodies are so tight. So many of them understand that their body is their moneymaker. Yeah, talking about the muscles, big guy. Don't get nervous. If you get nervous around tight men, that's maybe you should seek some counseling. My point is, I think these guys are so finely tuned, and it's going to seem weird when you say finely tuned, that everything is pulled as tight as possible. So when you cut quick, there's less flexibility. And these things, they pull and they pop, and it's a shame. It's really a shame. But I don't think you had as many back in the day, because I don't think the guys were as muscular and again, they use the word tight, and their bodies were not as tight as these athletes are today.
Yeah, I mean, I give you crap there, but I completely understand what you're saying. They're so cut, and the muscles are so lean because they're trying to stay fast as well as strong that I completely understand what you're saying there. I do think personally, I feel like there might be some, a little bit of credence to the idea that they don't necessarily practice enough in the preseason. There's not enough overall hitting and things like that. I mean, obviously you see these non-contact injuries, and that's not a factor, but we've seen a lot of other injuries. And we just think the overall amount of time that these guys put into the preparation of the season and the grind of the season is not what it used to be. And I think that there's a part of that. The other piece of this is, these types of injuries aside, guys are more aware of what an injury can do to your overall career. And I do think that these players today compared to years ago are more likely to shut things down and get healthy, which is, by the way, the right thing to do. I am not criticizing them in any way, shape, or form, but they are willing to shut things down, get healthy, get right before they come back on the field, where, we talk about guys like Ronnie Lott, who cut off a pinky to get back in the game. So, I just think it's a different mindset, and that is a good thing for the health of the players, but it does, I think it does impact the injuries and the amount of time games lost due to injury.
Yeah, and to another point, we also know that certain drugs were used more back in the day to mask injuries, to get guys through a game, the old shoot them up in the locker room at halftime to make sure they get through something. And I don't think those type of things are practiced these days, with the way, like you said, players are more concerned with, you don't want to deaden the pain of an injury only to make it worse because you ran on it without feeling it in an NFL game for another 30 minutes. So it's just been it's been a crapshoot as to so many early round picks. See guys that burst on the scene to be steals where you got them. I hate to see who's next. I really do. It just feels like it's not over. It's every weekend feels like a bloodbath. And now we have two guys that literally got hurt in the middle of the week.
Yeah, I mean that's tough because you don't really have. You have time in that it's not a late scratch, right? We all know that in fantasy the dreaded late scratch is the worst. You wait for a guy to play, and maybe he's an 8 o'clock game on a Sunday night, and you don't really have it back. We know that that's the worst when you're a fantasy player, but so at least this is a little better than that. But you don't really have. This is a bad week for injuries because there's so many teams on bye, and there are so many players, fantasy relevant players, not playing this week that it's tough. It's very tough to put together a lineup. I'll tell you, I was going through all my lineups today, making sure everything was set, and it was embarrassing in some places.
I'll tell you what some of the most fun leagues are for me sometimes, and you'll know about this because you're in that Yahoo league that's part of Supremacy. I like sometimes having a really thin roster where I have to look for guys that might hit or miss on a weekly basis. Now, I've scored plenty of points in that league. I actually play you in this upcoming week. I have 2 wins, and I think you have 4. But I have like 100 more points than you. My team has done really well. I've just matched up against other guys that have played really well also. So I kind of like having one league or maybe 2 leagues, because we all play in multiple, where I have to scout, look for those deeper guys. It's one aspect of fantasy that if you don't play in a lot of leagues, you don't necessarily enjoy or get to experience, because usually if you're focusing on 1 or 2 leagues, you want to make those premium. And I've managed to get by and score a ton of points with Ricardo Lewis, in a matchup one week where he really went off. And this week I have Alfred Morris to pop in there. And so I kind of like that aspect sometimes, but not at the having to deal with somebody losing a career or losing a season. You don't wish for injuries, but
no, absolutely.
There's many ways to enjoy fantasy football.
Absolutely not. I do agree with you though, and for bragging rights for anyone, right? There's nothing better than finding that diamond in a rough that goes off for a huge day that no one expected, and you're the guy that had him in your lineup. So that's definitely a fun part of fantasy football. So I absolutely agree with you there. It's just, when you see a team that and you have 5 guys on a bye week in week 9, and all of a sudden you look against the guy you're playing against and he's got 1, and you're like, it's tough. It hurts. It makes you feel a little less of a man, I think.
Act like a man!
All right, so Steve would tell us at this point that we are way behind because we haven't even gotten to a single game, and we are already 10 minutes into this podcast. So we should probably continue on here and get moving into some of these games. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets will be playing as we are recording this. They have not kicked off yet, and as I have been the last few shows, I'm in the bathroom, so I do not have access to a TV anyway. So maybe you'll keep me up to date on what's going on.
Well, let me get your opinion as a Patriots fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Jets are a more hated team for you as a Patriots fan than the Bills are, even though you dislike everybody in your division. But the Bills are 5-2. Who are you rooting for tonight?
Yeah, I mean the Bills are so the Jets are clearly our rival. The Bills are the that's cute team for us. It's really cute. They got 5 wins and they think they're going somewhere. Because inevitably, what happens is they get to 5-2, and then maybe they even get to 6-2 because they beat the Jets tonight. Although I would not be shocked for a Thursday night upset here with the Jets pulling out a victory. So but let's say they're 6-2, and then we know what happens the rest of the season for them. They go at most 4-4. The rest of the way, and they end up at 10-6, and maybe they get a playoff. At worst, they go 1-7 the rest of the way, end up at 7-9, and probably miss the playoffs. I could see that coming. This seems like a little bit of a better Bills team. At least they're playing better, but the talent is less. So I think it's a chemistry thing for them, which is good because those are the teams that surprise you. But I'm obviously. I can't root for the Jets. I was going to say I'm rooting for the Jets, but I can't. I can't root for the Jets. I'm not concerned about the division. I don't think the Bills will overtake the Patriots for the division. So I just can't root for the Jets.
That would be like you rooting for the Yankees when they're playing against Toronto. Hey, my dog decided to wake up. That's great. Once the podcast starts.
He knows exactly how I feel about the Jets. Your dog gets me.
Anyway, I had to go yell at him for a second.
Sorry,
but
I appreciate that. We appreciate the mute button while you go to yell at your dog. But I digress. We talked about my division a little bit, but we'll get into some other games here. We're going to start with the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the Panthers trade Kelvin Benjamin this week. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the week, I think. And, we talked about the impact it has to those Carolina pass catchers. Obviously, you got to bump up Devin Funchess a little bit, but I don't know that for me, it's a lot. For one, I don't think that he's good enough to be the number 1. I think he's going to see better coverage. I didn't see if Trufont's playing in this game, but if he is and he covers Benjamin, I think that's a big mismatch on their part. I'm not sure how Carolina's going to score in this particular game. I could see them really struggling to put points on the board. Yeah,
I mean, I'm actually going to roll with Cam Newton this week over Carson Wentz, believe it or not, in FLAFFL. I just have a feeling that they're going to actually play pretty well, and whether they get some short pass work done, whether they work Samuel in there more, and McCaffrey has been getting a ton of targets and receptions. I think that actually Carolina is going to put points up in this game. I think Atlanta has not looked nearly as good as we all thought they would coming back after last year and after the first few weeks. So I think Funchess is a touchdown threat, clearly. He's not a big play guy, but let's see. Does a guy like Russell Shepard start to rear his head? Is he a sleeper going forward? I think that Carolina will be okay in this game.
I feel like they're going to struggle to put up points. Interestingly enough, you say you're rolling out Cam Newton. I do have him as my 6th quarterback. I think a lot of that, as we'll get through these games, has a lot to do with some of the other bad matchups that are out there. But I think that I just worry about the receiving core and what they're going to do. Now maybe they can run the ball a little bit better and really get some things done on the ground using McCaffrey and Jonathan Stewart. But I'm concerned. I think the thing with Cam is there's always the ability to to run around, right? And that always gives him a pretty good floor. Not to mention, you mentioned your other option was Carson Wentz, and he's playing the Broncos, which I know haven't been as great in the passing game as they typically have been, but they're still pretty damn good. So,
they're very good. They're very good in the passing game. They shut down wide receivers like almost no other team does. So, yeah, I'm steering clear of that this week. But let me ask you, Devonta Freeman has been disappointing in recent weeks. He has not put up a big game in quite a few weeks. And Carolina has been pretty good against running backs this year. What are your thoughts on Devonta Freeman in this matchup?
I'm all in on Devonta Freeman, for a bounce back. I have him as obviously an RB1. Lower than he typically is for me. He's at running back 10. But I will say that I think that he gets a little bit more right in this one, only because it's a division matchup. I think he plays well in those games, and I think they need to get themselves back into a groove, and I think they know that the way to do that is to feed him the ball. I think that Matt Ryan has been struggling a little bit this year, and I think that they need to get back to running the ball an awful lot. Use Freeman and Coleman in the passing game. I think Coleman looked pretty good last week, and they tried to get him involved a little much more, which is good. And a lot of people get nervous about Freeman in the fact that Coleman's seeing an uptick in usage, but I don't. I think that they need to use those guys a bunch, both. They need to use both of them a lot in order for them both to be effective. So, I see him getting a decent amount of work, and I think that he comes back in this one. Call it a feeling or whatever, because obviously, as you point out, the Carolina Panthers are very good against the run. They third best in the league for fantasy points against running backs. So, yeah,
and there's no better tandem of running backs in the NFL that play together right now. And I said it last week during the game. There is no guy who does more with his touches, I feel, than Tevin Coleman. When he does get the chance to be a lead back somewhere, and this guy could get upwards of 20 touches a game, I think he's going to be super impressive. So we'll have to see where that goes in a year or so.
So what's the deal with Julio Jones? We've talked about it a couple times already this season. Do the red zone, targets finally come through? Does the touchdown regression stop, and does he get back on track with being Julio Jones?
I mean, I don't think he ever stopped being Julio Jones. I just think that he doesn't get the proper targets that he needs to get. I don't know. I can't. Why not force feed this guy? I mean, he's a freak of nature. You saw what he did a couple weeks ago, ripping a ball from a DB's hands from behind him. Throw the ball up there and let him make the play, because he'll make it 90% of the time. I really hope so. I have a lot riding on him in some really key places. And it's no doubt in my mind that if the ball's thrown in his direction, he's gonna get the numbers. It's just Matt Ryan's got to get his head out of his ass.
Yeah, the benefit for him having his head up his ass has been Mohamed Sanu has been very good. The last when he's on the field, he's been really, really effective. So, do you think that will continue? Is Mohamed Sanu a flex for you in all?
I think you got to still look. I think you got to still look at the matchups. I think that he moves up the rankings of a guy who you'd consider him over some other people in that position now. But I don't think he's a clear-cut every week guy that you're going to rely on.
28 catches, 302 yards, and 2 touchdowns in 6 games so far. So he's been targeted 41 times compared to Julio Jones 56. So he's clearly the number 2 guy. More so getting more targets than my boy Austin Hooper. So, all right. I think that's it. I don't know that there's too much else to talk about in this game. Is there any uptick for you in a guy like Curtis Samuel on the back to the Carolina Panthers side of the ball?
I'll wait a week. I'll see how he's being used. I'll see if he's being implemented more. I don't want to just randomly guess that that's the guy that's going to get more touches now that they moved Benjamin out of town. So this week it would be Funchess for me. It would be McCaffrey. It's not a bad matchup for Jonathan Stewart, as you said, but that's it.
All right, we will move along to the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Denver Broncos. This game is in Denver. It is at 1 o'clock, and obviously the Eagles are flying pretty high right now, 7-1 record. They trade for Jay Ajayi this week. He'll be on the field. What are you expecting out of Ajayi this week against a Denver defense that's been really good against the run? And I know that because I read your Sink or Swim article.
Yeah, he is on the sink list, and I will not put him. I clearly recommend that you try to avoid him this week. Again, 6 teams on a bye. It's going to be very difficult to do that. So if you have to march him out there, you march him out there. But other than Orleans Darkwa, which was an aberration, nobody has run on this guy. No good top flight running back in this league has run on this team, rather. So I don't know what makes you think Ajayi going across to a new team would suddenly say, hey, he's going to be the guy who does it. It's not for me. I'd wait till next week to get him out there. If I had options that maybe weren't as highly thought of as him, but have better matchups, I would look at those matchups.
I have him as running back 36 this week.
Oh, wow. So I think, Scott, let me get the smelling salts for Scott. Hold on. Get up, Scotty. Get up.
In fairness to me, usually you guys give me hell about my weird rankings. I'm not weird on this one because Steve has him at 33. So, I'm not the only one. Obviously, you talked about it. This Denver defense has been very stingy. They're obviously number 1 in the league for fantasy points against. They've only given up 437 yards on the ground, no touchdowns. They're not, giving up a lot of yards in the passing game as well. So overall, they've just been very stout. I'm fully agreement with you on this one. I am holding off. But and you mentioned Carson Wentz. You're starting you're starting Cam Newton over him. And I think that's the right choice. I have Wentz at QB 12, so in most leagues you're probably still starting him if you're me. But it's close, and if you want to start someone over him, I'm not going to be upset about it. I think a lot of that again is matchup based because there's some bad quarterback matchups out there. You talk about Kirk Cousins playing Seattle, Marcus Mariota playing Baltimore that are. Those are tough matchups there as well. So those are guys that if you wanted to throw them in there, I could see it. But I agree with you. With the type of season that Wentz has, I'm very curious to see if he will be able to rise above a defense like this.
Yeah, and not everybody's going to have to switch to a Cam Newton in a decent matchup like I do, especially in a 16-team league. But I drafted. I got very fortunate with the way the draft fell to me. I got Wentz kind of late in our draft, and I was one of the people that believed in him, and I was lucky to get him. I get reached out to at least once a day from somebody in FLAFFL asking me to trade him one of the 2 quarterbacks.
Some good keeper value there for sure.
2 people today alone.
So let's talk about the running backs on the Denver side of the ball because I know that CJ Anderson was also on your sink list, I should say. Philadelphia's been just a tad bit worse than Denver, but still tops in the league as far as their points given up to running backs for fantasy. Denver has to make a quarterback change here in this one because Simeon has just been so ineffective. They're actually going to Brock Osweiler, which
who would have thought that, right?
It's so. I wish Steve was here because I would. It's fun when he cries. And this, if I were him, this would make me cry. But my question is, do you think that this, in any way, shape, or form, can help C.J. Anderson?
Well, first, is there any part of you that thinks Osweiler could come out and possibly look good? I mean, I don't know. As you pointed out the other day, he's tall.
Right. There is actually, I will say this. Maybe I'm crazy, but there is a part of me that feels like he could be better than he was in Houston.
I agree.
In this offense, he's obviously got some comfort there. He played, sporadically, but showed some signs of being a talented quarterback before taking that big deal to go to Houston. So maybe it's just an offense that he's comfortable running, and he has some swagger back by being in it. So look, he can't be any worse than Simeon's been the last few weeks.
Yeah, he's been brutal. And to get back to your original question, I don't think that it could help right away. Because to me, if I'm the Eagles, I'm stacking the box, and I'm going to say, beat me, Brock Osweiler. Go ahead. So I think that they shut down the run this week, which they've done to under 50 yards a game. I mean, they've played 8 games and given up 348 rushing yards to running backs. That's it. So I can't see how this is a good C.J. Anderson game.
Do you think there's a sneaky play for a guy like Devonta? Excuse me. Why am I blanking on the last name here? Devontae Booker. I apologize. To be utilized in the passing game a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. They do give up. They have given up 4 passing touchdowns to running backs this year, and they have given up 52 receptions and 385 yards. So the pass catching guy might be the better option, and they might want to play that kind of a game with Osweiler getting comfortable, getting his feet wet. So it would have to be a really deep league for me to take that chance. But I would say, yeah, I don't think it's impossible to believe that could happen.
All right, so then back to fantasy relevant people. Obviously, Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are both very talented wide receivers who are struggling this year because of their terrible quarterback play. Demaryius Thomas has not gotten in the end zone yet this season. He has 455 yards and he has 35 receptions. But he did show a little life with Brock Osweiler as far as back when they played when Osweiler was there originally. So what do you do with these guys? They've been barely wide receiver 3s at this point, but they're so talented. You have to expect that at some point they're going to have big games.
I'd probably have to wait on Sanders and see how well he comes back from the injury. He's been out for a few weeks now, but this is definitely a spot that I start Demaryius Thomas in, because we've about it many times that a quarterback doesn't have to be good, as most people feel about Blake Bortles. A quarterback does not have to have a very good game for a wide receiver to have a good fantasy day, because, again, 1 touchdown and a couple of yards will end up being a good fantasy day for a wide receiver. But we've seen guys pass for 195 yards and throw 3 interceptions, but if 125 of those yards go to the wide receiver and a touchdown, the wide receiver has a good day. So this is a good matchup. The Eagles, probably the part of their defense so far this year is defending wide receivers. They are 9th worst in the league. So I get Demaryius Thomas in there this week. They've given up a 28-point game to Odell Beckham, a 26-point game to Sterling Shepard, 22 to Terrell Williams. They've given up big games, 18 to Keenan Allen. And, they've given up multiple big games to receivers in the same game. So is it possible Sanders could have a good day? Yeah, but I'm probably waiting on him
Yeah, I just think eventually with these guys, the talent will win out, but we will have to wait and see how Brock Osweiler gets this offense working. All right, let's continue on. We've gone through 2 games, and Steve would be very angry with us. So we're going to move to the Tennessee Titans facing...
Flip off, Stephen Marcus!
The Tennessee Titans taking off the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. You know what I'm excited about for this game, Sal? Corey Davis. He's been injured for quite some time with a hamstring injury. He's been out of the lineup for a while, but it looks like he's going to play this week. I get it. You're not starting him this week because obviously this is a tough defense anyway. I expect Mariota to struggle a little bit in this one, in the passing game to be down in general. But I am excited to see this kid again and see if he's, when he's healthy, if he's going to be something that you can utilize later in this season, because the Tennessee wide receivers have struggled, and they need something. They need someone to come in and be a dominant force in the passing game. So I'm curious if this guy gets a couple of games under his belt, weeks 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 here, and he looks decent, you might be able to use him for a playoff run. And he could be like found gold.
Yeah, well, right now the only thing that's there is fool's gold, because none of these guys have done anything. And as you know, they are the entire wide receiver core shows up on my sync list this week because, just point out the big game that anybody has had on Tennessee this year outside of a tight end catching the football. It just hasn't happened.
No, there's none. There's no big
very,
games.
very ugly.
This
was a team that was thought to be coming in and making a leap this year, and it's taken a big step backwards. And that's coupled with some injuries and Mariota struggling more than we might have thought. People thought he was going to progress to a top-flight fantasy quarterback this year, and that actually became DeShaun Watson in that division and not him. But, yeah, like you said, let's watch Corey Davis. Let's see what he could do. We know the immense talent he has, which is why he was drafted so highly. If you could grab him and add him, if he's floating around there on waivers, you do that. If you've held on to him, then let's hope that he pays off for you.
Yeah, the other reason I'm excited to see him this week is because Delaney Walker injured. He's questionable to play with an ankle injury. He has a bone bruise in his right ankle. It's unclear if he's going to play, and if he's out, again, I think even more so you need to see what Corey Davis can do. But a guy that you've talked about in the past is Jonnu Smith. If Walker is out in this game, is Jonnu Smith a guy that you'd be considering inserting into your lineup, particularly with all these bye weeks?
I would, and mainly because the Ravens have given up 6. Is it the Ravens?
Yes, still talking about the Ravens.
I thought I lost my train of thought. The Ravens have given up 6 passing touchdowns, or receiving touchdowns rather than tight ends. So they've been vulnerable to it. They gave up the 3 in one game to Mercedes Lewis, so that number might be a little skewed. But they are vulnerable to the big play with the tight end. And Jonnu Smith, we've seen him worked in with Walker in a. And he's a quick kid. He's really fast for the position, and he's got great hands. So I like him. He's somebody I added in the FLAFFL league, and I'm going to end up starting him this week because of the Jordan Reed injury, and we know that he's out. But I believe I grabbed him in the Scott Fish Bowl as well because I have Delaney Walker and I have him in a few other places, and I absolutely recommend starting him this week.
Great pickup there. Again, tough defense. I wonder what will go on with the running backs in Tennessee. Obviously, DeMarco Murray's a little banged up, but he's got a shoulder injury. We've heard this week after week. Derrick Henry has looked, in my opinion, better than DeMarco Murray this season, but doesn't quite get the number of carries that Murray does, and he's just not getting the overall usage. Their numbers are very similar if you look statistically. 86 attempts, 372 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Murray, 75, 331, and 2 for Henry. But you just want them to go with one of them, right?
Yeah, and even me being a big Henry guy, I would rather just go with one of them. So if it's going to be Murray, that way I know not to start Henry. I seem to start him in the weeks that he's not good, and then he goes off in a week that I sit him and I put him back in, and that's just the way it's been with Henry this year. There was rumors that Murray was possibly going to get moved the other day. It didn't happen. This might be one, you got to downgrade both guys maybe this season until either there's a clear-cut decision made or an injury.
Yeah, I agree. Baltimore also obviously has a very solid defense, but that is the one thing you can do on them. You can run a little bit. They've given up 19.5 points per game to fantasy running backs. So, and that's 10th worst in the league. So, you can run a little bit, but to your point, I think either one of these guys, if they were going to be the sole running back or the lead running back, would be a top 5 play just about every week. But unfortunately, they're RB2s at this point because you can't count on one getting more than the other. So, all right, let's take a quick look at the Baltimore Ravens side of the ball, and that's it. Good talk.
Wow. All right. Go team. Alex Collins.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously Alex Collins with the breakout last week had a big game. He's been good the whole season, to be honest with you, but they're still working in Javorius Buck Allen, whatever you want to call him. Collins obviously has more yards. He's in less carries. He's got a 6.0 yards per carry average right now, which is amazing. They need to continue feeding him the ball because in this offense, I think he's really the only thing serviceable. We did hear that Danny Woodhead was practicing. Doesn't look like he'll return until at least week 11, though, so you got time on him. But is there anyone else that in this offense? I mean, Macklin caught a touchdown last week, and I believe Ben Watson did too. With bye weeks, you might be looking to start Ben Watson or Macklin, but I don't even know if I trust those guys week to week. You might even have better options.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not starting a wide receiver on that team. There's not a single wide receiver I'm even going to remotely take a chance on. And Watson, he was good there for a while, and then there was a big gap for a couple weeks. He had the touchdown last week, like you're saying. I could find better options. Even in a week with 6 teams off, I could find better options.
Yeah, I have him as tight end 12, so I'm fringe startable for him as far as the the other options, some guys I have behind him are guys that we'll talk about a little later. Cameron Brate, which you obviously don't like this week either. So, but we'll get into those. Anything else about the Ravens and what are the Tennessee Titans?
Please, God, no, please. Move on.
All right, let's continue on. We'll talk about the Los Angeles Rams and the New York Giants. Giants go west, I should say, to face the Rams in Los Angeles. Nope, I lied. That game's in New York, huh?
Yes, welcome back to New York, everybody.
Welcome back to New York. The Giants are 1-6, Sal. It's weird for me to see that. We've talked about it before, but do you think at this point in the season you have to start worrying about that entire offense throwing in the towel?
I mean, listen, you have to worry about the entire team, obviously. We know what's going on there. We know that Cromartie was Cromartie was suspended weeks earlier for conduct detrimental to the team and comments that he made. And now one of the league's best defensive backs, and Janoris Jenkins, a very highly paid guy who's brought in to be a leader and has been playing fine, has just made statements that got his ass suspended. And I think that this coaching staff has lost this team. I can't see anybody wanting to play for them. I cannot see Odell Beckham Jr. coming back next year and respecting this guy. The Giants need to clean house, and that goes all the way to the top. It is time for Jerry Reese to move on. He had a great run. He won 2 Super Bowls, but he's more miss than hit. So for me, I think it only gets worse for the Giants this year. I think that guys will quit on both sides of the ball. It's just what we've seen happen. And I think that the Giants have to completely restart over next season.
So to that point, maybe Sterling Shepard, who looks like he's going to start in this game, maybe Orleans Darkwa, given the amount of players that are on bye this week. But is that it? And obviously you're not expecting much out of them. Obviously Eli Manning you may have to start given the number of bye weeks as well. He's a guy that I'm starting in a deep league, our FLAFFL 16-team league, because he was really the only option I had. So, but that's it from the Giants for my mind, and that's it for the rest of the season too. I don't expect much out of any of these guys going forward. To your point, Evan Ingram. Sorry.
I was going to say you probably get Ingram in there, even though the Rams are one of the better teams in the league against tight ends. Ingram gets so much volume, and he's such a mismatch for what his size is and his speed, that I play Ingram pretty much every week now.
So having said that about the Giants' defense, obviously you mentioned Janoris Jenkins and the whole fact that they might just call it a day and call it quits. You're pretty high on on Jared Goff and the Rams' offense this week then, huh?
Yeah, the Giants have been absolutely atrocious against quarterbacks. I believe that they, over the last 5 weeks, or the last 3 weeks, are the absolute worst team facing quarterbacks, and they have given up, and I don't have my sink or swim in front of me, but I believe they've given up 3 touchdowns in 3 out of the last 4 games, 3 passing touchdowns, and over 300 yards passing in 3 out of those 4 games. And Goff had 8 touchdowns and 1 interception through his first 4 games this year. He was playing really well. Then he struggled a little bit. He went into the bye week. I think they come out of the bye week. I think they work the passing game, including getting the passes off to Gurley. And I think this is a nice spot for Goff this week, especially if your starter is missing on a bye this week.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Jared Goff this week. I have him at quarterback number 8. What does that mean as far as who he's going to throw to? We've seen struggling Sammy Watkins, a guy that just has immense talents that people have just been waiting to get an opportunity and be healthy, and now he's healthy and he looks terrible. Cooper Kupp has been serviceable but inconsistent as a rookie. And then you see guys like Robert Woods pop up every once in a while, or the occasional Tavon Austin sighting. So, who's the benefactor of Goff's good week, or is it just a combination, or is it Gurley that just is more involved in the passing game?
I think, like you said, it's a combination, and you got the 2 tight ends there. We all know that the Giants are extremely giving to tight ends, so a guy like Higbee might be in line for a good week. Doesn't mean it could be Gerald Everett for all we know. But to your point, yeah, I think this is more a big Goff game and a combination of guys. Combination? That's not a word.
Combination. Well, let's go with it. I think it's good.
I think that you're not going to be able to pick which is the guy or two guys or three guys that get those touchdowns. So for me, and this goes back a few weeks when we were having that conversation about Watkins and Ginn. Watkins is strapped to my bench now. He has been useless for 4+ weeks.
Yeah, it's been a struggle with him. I don't know. I think I have to look. I'm trying to find him right now. I think I have Cooper Kupp actually rated higher than him right now.
Why wouldn't you? Absolutely
for this week. Just because of the volume, particularly in PPR, I think he just gets more work. But you're right, Watkins has been terrible, and you have to wonder if you're in a dynasty league and you own Watkins and you haven't sold him or given up yet, which I don't think you should because just the value's not there. It's almost like you wonder if he goes to a different scheme next year, when he's available as a free agent, if he picks a better team and that works around, because we've seen the talent with him. But
it's not a talent. The talent goes back to college, but there was actually a rumor that he was almost moved again at the trading deadline yesterday.
Couldn't blame them if they did. So, all right, we got to continue on. So we will move along to the next game. We are going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. If there was ever a time to lick your chops as a quarterback, it is Drew Brees for this matchup. The Bucs
get your Mike Thomases here. Get your Mike Thomases.
Yeah, right. Get your stack all over the place. I tell you, if I play a DraftKings lineup that doesn't have those two in it, I will be shocked. This is what you've been waiting for. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are absolutely dreadful against the opposing wide receivers. They are dreadful against opposing quarterbacks. A little bit better than they are against wide receivers, but not much. And this one should be Drew Brees all over again. A lot of people have been worried about Drew Brees and whether or not he's falling off a little bit. We've seen the defense actually carry that team a little bit more than normal. But they're quietly 5-2, and I think this is one where the offense gets right.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay's not even that good against running backs. They've given up 6 touchdowns to running backs as well. So start Ingram, start Thomas. I don't know that I'm ready to say start Ginn, but he's had like 3 straight good games. So I don't know. Coleman gets a touchdown here or there. Definitely, you got the trio and Kamara. Breeze, Kamara, Ingram, and Thomas going. I think Fleener is a guy that's almost droppable at this point. We see the other tight ends being worked in. He had a good first 2 weeks, and he's been unnoticeable since.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Josh Hill is a guy that I am keeping an eye on this week because he had 4 targets in the last game, 3 of them, 3 catches, 29 yards. I believe the one that he didn't catch was actually an end zone play, if I remember correctly. And you're right, Fleener's just been bad overall, so I wouldn't be surprised if they look at Hill a little bit more in this one. Tampa Bay, since it's part of the passing game, can't really defend tight ends either. They're a little bit better. That's their best defense, I suppose, if you want to give them credit for anything. On the Tampa Bay side of the ball, are you worried about Jameis Winston in this one?
I mean, he's played well. It's hard to be worried about him, and with not a lot to choose from. New Orleans is not the same old beatable defense that they've been in the past, and they've defended a lot better. But I probably them out there because I think there's going to be points put up by both teams in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it should be. They should have to keep up with it. We just talked about how we think that New Orleans is going to score in this one. So Tampa Bay should have to keep up at least, and I think that they will be able to do so at least a little bit. The Saints are middle of the road against opposing quarterbacks. I'm more concerned about the injury because I don't know that Winston has been, obviously he's been limited in practice. So you just wonder things like those AC joint injuries. If he takes one bad hit, your day is shot. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Mike Evans, do you think that he has been Mike Evans like this year?
At times, I've seen him look every bit the part of what we thought he would be, but I don't think he's having the top flight statistical season that we had hoped for. But yeah, I think that it's not like he's on a downward spiral and he's not the player that we thought he was.
Your dog seems very upset about how his performance.
Well, he's more of a DeShaun Jackson fan, and he's not happy.
Is he big on DeShaun on D-Jax this week?
Yeah, dogs stick together.
Oh, man. All right, so that's it for me on this one. I think Doug Martin's a guy you're obviously going to get in there. Not his best matchup because I think that New Orleans has been playing running backs a little bit better this year than they have in the past. If I am remembering correctly. Nope. Yeah, middle of the pack. So better than they have in the past. But I think you're going to get him in there with limited options. So let's continue on here. Let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, we have to, Sal. I assure you we have to talk about it. We can talk about the Jacksonville defense and how great they've been. So if you play, leagues where you have to start a defense, that's one that I would consider in this one. Let me ask you this, though. With that defense being as good as it's been, the Bengals have been struggling, offensively all season anyway. Are you worried about A.J. Green in this one? And even more so, are you worried about him going forward?
I don't know that I'm worried about him going forward. I did. I looked long and hard about possibly putting him on a sink list this week. I really did. Because this Jacksonville team has been really, really stout on defense when it comes to the passing game. They have given up one touchdown to wide receivers this year, just one. And this is a down week, in my opinion, for Andy Dalton. I was up on him last week. He had a good week. I got him on a sink this week. You don't sit guys like A.J. Green. You just don't sit them. It's like sitting Mike Evans. It's like sitting Odell Beckham Jr. These guys, there's only so many of these guys in a league, and you play them because they can seemingly break out against anybody. But what Jacksonville has going on over there, and they're adding pieces seemingly every week, boy, I don't go into it feeling confident.
Let me ask you, I have him at wide receiver 13. Steve has him at wide receiver 5. What's wrong with Steve?
Well, you were talking about this particular instance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Steve. You could just do it in general, though.
Steve loves A.J. Green. That's one of his guys.
He really does.
He is one of his guys. He believes in him. I think that he probably feels he's better than most of these other elite guys. Steve loves him. So Steve subscribes to the theory of what I just said, which is he can do it against anybody. He's got that type of ability. It's like Julio Jones. Just throw the ball up there and let him make the plays. We've seen those ridiculous Hail Mary catches where he's in a sea of 4 defenders and somehow he comes down with the ball with one hand while he's being pulled with the other one. He's a freakishly good athlete. So I know that Steve has much love for him.
It's good. His little binky. A.J. Green's his little binky there. All right. Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. Leonard Fournette is very good. He's been battling injuries, but he should be okay in this one. Another week, hopefully he's a little bit better. But I want to ask you about Blake Bortles because Cincinnati's been a little stingy against the pass to begin with, and yet with all these bye weeks, a lot of people are a little higher on Bortles than I think they should be. Are you one of them?
No, I'm not. I have Marquise on the sink, I believe, this week. He's been battling a knee injury, so that's one of the top weapons. They are getting D.D. Westbrook healthy and in this game here, so they're getting better weapons. But to me, I unfortunately don't own Leonard Fournette anywhere this year. He's quickly become a favorite of mine. I like watching this guy play. I like the toughness that he brings. I like the fact that he wants the ball. He wants to bang. So for me, the smart play is run this guy.
Well,
run this guy as much as...
22-year-old kid doesn't want to bang.
Well, I tell you. I remember the days. But we digress, Ken.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't like Bortles this week. I would not be using him unless I was ridiculously desperate. I had Deshaun Watson, and I decided I'm good, and I dropped all my other quarterbacks, and now I got to go to the waiver wire and find one. And even then, I could probably find somebody I'd like more than Bortles this week. So not recommended. There is a 2 QB league that we're in together, and I am actually going to be using Bortles this week, but I mean, that's 2 QBs. It's a 14-team, 2 QB league, and there's only 26 quarterbacks playing this week.
Hey, not for nothing, but I'm starting 1 quarterback in that league, so maybe you should try that.
If you've seen the rest of my choices, you'd realize I'm just better off going with whatever quarterback was breathing.
All right, let's keep moving along then. The Indianapolis Colts will play the Houston Texans. This game is in Houston, and it's going to be a sad one for that Texans team, who, as you mentioned earlier, lost their starting quarterback, their rookie quarterback, clearly the guy that was Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. No chance of anyone else even coming close. He should still win it, even though he tore his ACL and will be out for the rest of the season. DeShaun Watson has been nothing short of amazing as far as a rookie for a guy that, obviously was drafted in the first round, yet still wasn't very highly touted in the fantasy community and wasn't highly touted, in the league. A lot of people had questions about him, but he's been phenomenal. They now turn back to Tom Savage, and in my mind, DeAndre Hopkins' great season just now has a huge question mark going forward.
And go back to Dabo Swinney saying if you pass on this guy, you're passing on Michael Jordan. He just might, right, in the long term. Richard Sherman came out after last week's game and said, "You've played the best game against us anyone has ever played, and we've played against legends." Yeah. So that's high praise from a guy like Richard Sherman. So, yeah, I'm gonna put Hopkins out there. I'm not gonna sit him because I know he's done everything that he's done this year with Watson. He had a very bad first half of the first week with Savage. Watson came in and instantly turned the season around. But right now, him and Fuller, they have to be in my lineup. I mean, both of them, one is scoring in PPR scoring this year 21.1 points a week, and the other one is scoring 21 points a week. They're number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in the league. You put them both in and prove me wrong. Show me that you can't do it before I put you on my bench.
Yeah, Will Fuller's the one that scares me. I think you're going to roll out DeAndre Hopkins because I think like A.J. Green and like Mike Evans, the guys that we've already talked about tonight, it's just a guy that you don't take out of your lineup because I think that at any week he can still be good. Will Fuller's the one that makes me a little nervous. I have him, ranked at wide receiver 15 this week, so I still expect him to be good. I'm concerned that the touchdowns will go away and that will hurt his value, but he's been so good you have to ride it, even with Tom Savage coming in, so I agree with you there. One guy that I do want to ask you about, though, we've seen benefit from Deshaun Watson quite a bit, is Lamar Miller. He's had almost a resurgence. Yards per carry hasn't been great, but he's been utilized in the passing game, and he's scored 4 touchdowns this year, so he's been very serviceable. He's had some big games. A lot of that stems from, Watson being a guy that runs around a little bit and opens things up. We all know that the mobile quarterback tends to open things up for running backs. You had him on your swim list, if I remember correctly. Obviously, that was printed before the Deshaun Watson news. Would you still have Miller on your swim list if Tom Savage was the starter earlier today?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes because Indy has been so terrible against running backs this year. I mean, they've given up 10 touchdowns this year to running backs. It's not as ideal of a situation as we thought. Obviously, they expect the scoring to go down. Within an hour of that injury, the over went from 51 to 46, and the spread went from 13 to 7. So obviously, they're expecting a lowest.
Brutal.
Yeah, they're obviously expecting a lower score game, but yeah, Miller is on the field a ton. If you click on that Sink or Swim article, you can either go to the FLAFFL Twitter account and find it there, or pinned at the top of my Twitter account, or even falaffelhouse.com, and you'll check out the statistics. I get into stat percentage and how you probably don't realize just how much he's on the field. I think he becomes a forgotten guy a lot of times, or an underappreciated or underrated guy. And if you're worried about the rookie, read the article and you'll see he's clearly in the rearview mirror right now.
Yeah, another guy that seems to be a forgotten man in the league is Frank Gore. Obviously, everyone knows how old he is, and they keep expecting him to fall off a cliff. A lot of people clamoring for Marlon Mack. Houston has been very good against the run this year. They're the 4th best against fantasy running backs. So are you touching either of these running backs in this matchup?
I love Mac, and I love what he could do, and I love the possibilities that he brings to the table. But Houston has been really good. It's again, I hate to keep saying it over and over again, and we have to. My dog wants Mac. It's a tough week to not be using guys if they're available.
So the only other guy that I think, obviously there's a lot of talk about T.Y. Hilton and Dante Moncrief being moved this week. Obviously neither of them left the team. I think that's a good thing, and I think these guys might come out and play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I would probably, Moncrief's been so terrible. He's thrown up duds. He's gotten no points in certain games. He's only got 1 touchdown in the season and 18 catches. Kamar Aiken's been more productive than him so far, in certain spots, and it makes me nervous. But this is the type of game, even against a good defense, where I can see these guys being irritated about the trade talk and really just coming out and trying to prove something. So those are guys that I'm a little higher on than others, and I would get them in my lineup. The other guy is Jack Doyle, Sal, and he had a big game last week, and he's been very good this season when he's played. Looks like he has a little bit of a connection with Jacoby Brissett, but so he's in this type of week, I think he's another tight end that you have to get in your lineup. Yeah,
Doyle's been. I think he obviously had a career day last week, and Moncrief was a name that was rumored to be traded at the deadline almost. That was kind of a shocker, I think, to people.
It's a little weird. I mean, he's a guy that I think this is his last year. He's slated to be a free agent next year, and I think that it makes a little sense when you look at it from the dollars perspective, especially now knowing that Andrew Luck is on IR for the rest of the season, so he's done for the year. Obviously, it's kind of a lost season for them. So when you think about that, you think about the fact that T.Y. Hilton's blocking him from being a true number one, it's possible he's going to look to go elsewhere. So, for them, why wouldn't they float out trying to trade him and see if they could get anything? I mean, if they can get a 3rd or 4th round pick for him rather than letting him go in free agency, I think it makes sense to try and do that. So I
just think that we know Luck's going to be back next year. Obviously, he's taking the rest of the year off. It sucks that they played with people the way that they did. Mm-hmm. But these are guys that work so well with him. These weapons that I understand he's a free agent and he's not going to be the true number one. But we've seen specifically with the Colts when Peyton Manning was there, more than one wide receiver sustain wide receiver one numbers in that offense. So, I mean, for me, I'd like to see him remain there and play with Luck next year.
Yeah, I absolutely would too. I completely agree with you. Hopefully he signs with them because I think that he has a good connection with Luck, and I think he can be very effective in that offense, particularly with a guy like T.Y. Hilton opposite him. So I would like to see him stay there as well, but as I said, I could see them thinking he might want to leave, and they know the player better than we do, so it's possible they saw that that he might leave, and that's why they were floating him out there. But all right, we have to move on. We are so far behind, but I want to first ask you about the draft app. Sal, did you get in any drafts last weekend?
I did. As I told you the other night, I played in an expert draft against Tyler from Dynasty Happy Hour. I did not fare well in that one because I had Wendell Smallwood, which I think you had Wendell Smallwood in your expert draft as well.
I did.
If I remember correctly, you were playing against Tony, who writes for FLAFFLhouse.com. And, so I was a little bit busy last week, so I didn't get in as many as I usually like to get in, but I'm planning on getting in a ton this week. And thank God that these injuries came out on Thursday, and we can adjust our lineups even in the draft app for this weekend, because it's the best place to go to when your team has been injured, suspended, traded, dropped, benched, or just decided to quit on their team. You can go every week and start fresh, build a new lineup, and feel like your season is not lost just because your redraft season-long team crapped the bed.
Yeah, the other great thing about the draft app, Sal, is that when you do draft players like that, sometimes they'll give you the option to, or they've been so great about people getting screwed over at last-minute injuries or last-minute point changes or referee calls. They've given points back and given money back to people throughout the entire season, just giving money back for people that lost because of an incident that they were unable to control. I have not heard about that from any other DFS site or any other fantasy site in general.
Yeah, most of those other sites look at you with their big middle finger up and laugh at you. These guys are giving money back tickets to, like $1 tickets and $3 tickets. And as we spoke about the other night, they have a drawing for a bicycle.
So great. So great.
Pretty awesome. So
yeah, definitely a good bunch of guys. And, it's very functional. You can play in all different types of formats. You can play, you can do the snake drafts. You can do any size league, any denomination of entry fee. You can do dream teams. You can do bracket head-to-heads. I mean, there's so many different ways you can customize what you want to do, and you can do it every week so that you don't have to deal with those nagging injuries. You definitely want to get in there. You can go to playdraft.com/falafel, or you can go download the PlayDraft app on iTunes or the Google Play Store. You can enter promo code falafel, that's FLAFFL. When you deposit at least $10, they'll get you a free entry this weekend. So if you get in there right now, go to playdraft.com/falafel or go to iTunes or Google Play Store and use promo code falafel and deposit $10. They will get you in the game this weekend for no money. So you'll have all $10 next week. You can find Sid Skeet on the app and you can challenge him and you can steal his money, because that is the way to do it.
I mean, who doesn't look for a good Sid Skeet beatdown?
That's right. All right, let's continue on. We are an hour into this podcast, and Steve is going to be very upset when he's editing because we.
Oh boy! How many games do we have left?
We have 4 games left, unless you want to talk about Monday night, which I don't think we're going to do. So.
Nope. Let's go. Move.
All right. This one should be very quick. The Arizona Cardinals are playing the San Francisco 49ers. We know that the big deal this week was San Francisco trading for Jimmy Garoppolo, but obviously he's not going to play this week, so they will be turning their offense back over to C.J. Beathard. I do not expect much from this offense. Pierre Garcon obviously missing the game, and Carlos Hyde I think is a good play this week, and that's about it. I am concerned a little bit about Arizona stuffing the run as far as just loading up on it because they don't have to worry about anything else. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, we could see that happen, but there's one offensive weapon left on this team. It's Carlos Hyde. So if anybody's going to get touches, maximum volume, it's going to be Carlos Hyde.
I agree. All right, on the other side of the ball, we will see Drew Stanton again for the Cardinals, which basically kills everyone's value. But I do know that you were yet again putting your good friend Adrian Peterson on the swim list.
Oh, how could you not, right? I mean, I even wrote that. I didn't want to do it, but it's just like he have a good game before the bye week because they had to abandon a run, and even when he carried the ball, he just didn't look as good as he did in the first week. So I think, and somebody reached out to me about something on the sink or swim list this week. They asked me why I would even bother putting Andy Dalton in there when it was against the Jaguars defense, because I'm trying to reach a broader audience. Some of those are some novice players, and not everybody gets in depth like we do. Reading up on the defenses, and that's why we write articles, and that's why we record this show, hoping that people will listen who don't look that deep into stuff. The San Francisco 49ers are atrocious at defending running backs. They've given up nearly 1,500 yards already to running backs in 8 games, and that's combined rushing and receiving. 10 touchdowns.
50
You got to start this guy.
50.
550 yards receiving to running backs. Now, Adrian Peterson is not going to catch a ton of footballs, but they've given up over 900 yards. They've given up well over 100 yards a game rushing to running backs. This offense has to balance out. It cannot be carried on Drew Stanton's shoulders. This is an old man week. Larry Fitz, Adrian Peterson, get the old men in your lineup.
Going with the old men again. You know that I am an ageist, so I feel obligated by law to disagree with you. I do have Adrian Peterson at running back 16. He should probably be a little higher for me. I do like some of the other matchups that are out there, but I agree with you that he should be, in your lineups this week for sure. Are you going to put anyone else in this? Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald has historically been an every week play. I think this is the one week where I would be concerned about him.
I mean, San Francisco is they're just dreadful, and
Drew Stanton.
it's in recent weeks they've given up on defensive backs, veteran
Drew
guys.
Stanton.
They've given away guys.
It's Drew
okay.
Stanton.
Larry is a legend. He's proven to be quarterback proof in his career. He's done it with everybody who's been there. So
there is no one that can make Drew Stanton look good, in my opinion.
There is. What if he was standing next to a naked woman?
She would look good, not him.
Yeah, but it would spruce him up a little bit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess that maybe he might have a little bit of a benefit there, but I digress. I don't know that there's much else to talk about. I mean, I'm starting John Brown and Larry Fitzgerald in a couple of places simply because I have to in very deep leagues, but I certainly a standard 12-team league. I'm maybe starting, Fitz as a wide receiver 2 or 3, but that's about it and that's only because there's no depth out there this week. All right, let's keep moving along here. We are going to move to the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Washington football team. This game is in CenturyLink Field in Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks traded for an offensive lineman this week, Sal, and a pretty good one at that. Dwayne Brown has been a top left tackle in the league for some time now. He's been to several Pro Bowls, and this team needed to shore up their offensive line. I think it was a great deal. They tried to send a cornerback their way. Were unsuccessful because of the health issues, but they still sent picks and get this guy in there. Do you think that there's an uptick for the running game at all in this? Can we count on Eddie Lacy or Thomas Rawls or any of them, or CJ Prosise or JD McKissick going forward?
Well, in an absolute crazy twist of events yesterday, there was a report out that Eddie Lacy was cut, and then within a few minutes it was said that was an incorrect report and that Eddie Lacy will be relied on heavily this week.
I see. Those are the types of reports that I don't believe at all.
I'm with you. I was about to say I'm not buying it. No. I'm not putting them in. I stick with the guys who have done it so far this year, and that is Russell Wilson, who in recent weeks has been right up there with the top 3 quarterbacks on a weekly basis. The guy's putting up a lot of touchdowns now. He's starting to get comfortable, as he seemingly does a month into the season every year, and I keep getting Baldwin in there. We've gone back and forth all year with Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett. I'm not sitting here telling you that I think Richardson has a far better talent than Lockett. Not at all. I like to tease you about that, but the guy's getting a lot of looks in the end zone, and he had a really monster game last week. I stick with the passing game. Jimmy Graham, I think, showed up on the injury report, so keep your eye on that as the week progresses. But no, I'm not touching any running back on this team yet. Not now. Not by far. Not until a few guys either I'm being told they're not dressing or they've completely been, sent to the bench.
Yeah, I think if one of these guys blows up, like if for some reason these reports are actually true and Eddie Lacy comes out and gets 25 carries for some reason and is effective, then you might want to pick one up or get one in your lineup for the next week and ride the hot hand, because I think Pete Carroll's smart enough to do that himself. But I think that's you're absolutely right. I love Tyler Lockett in this one. I have him as a wide receiver 20. I agree with you. You can't argue what Paul Richardson has done. He's been very effective, in the passing game. Been great in the end zone. He's got 5 touchdowns, but I think those touchdowns will regress. And I like the way they're using the way they're using Lockett right now. He's getting a lot of looks. He's got 39 targets, 26 catches, 345 yards. He's been very good. So, I expect that trend to continue going up.
But wide receiver 20?
Yep, you got it.
Washington is one of the top 5 defenses against wide receivers this year.
You got it.
And Lockett is wide receiver 20?
Yeah, I got Baldwin at 4.
I could see Baldwin. He's a good football player.
It's always got to be one that you got to laugh at every week. So we'll see how that goes.
Listen, I evidently stopped doing rankings, so I can't really bring you.
On the Washington side of the ball, obviously this is a defense that was torn up by DeShaun Watson last week, but they've been as effective as they have been outside of that game. It was more of an outlier. So are is Kirk Cousins a starter for you this week in a week with a lot of buys, or is he a guy you're hesitating on?
I mean, Seattle's always traditionally shut down the pass well. It's probably the best thing that they do. But Kirk Cousins, I think, is a weekly starter for you, especially in a down week. This is not the week you're looking for somebody to take Kirk Cousins' spot. If Washington's going to compete in this game and they're going to have any shot at winning, they're going to have to do it through the air. They're running.
Kirk Cousins or Carson Wentz?
I would probably start Wentz.
Yeah, I have him one spot higher. What about Matt Ryan?
I'd start Matt Ryan.
What about Jameis Winston?
I'd start Kirk Cousins.
You'd start Kirk Cousins over Jameis Winston? Huh.
Yeah, I'm not a Jameis Winston fan.
All right. Interesting. What about one more? Marcus Mariota or Kirk Cousins?
Who's Tennessee playing? Indianapolis?
Baltimore. We talked about that game
Tennessee. Houston's playing. I'd start Kirk Cousins, definitely.
All right. Interesting. Those are the guys that I have around Kirk Cousins. So I have Kirk Cousins at 13, so he's just outside of the starters range for me. But I think if you want to throw him in your lineup, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't know that there's much else here. The wide receivers have been banged up, in Washington, and Crowder is he should be ready for the game, but it's definitely questionable. Pryor has been awful in dealing with a foot injury. He's going to play, but I don't know. Kirk Cousins, I think, is really the only guy that I trust, and Chris Thompson maybe, but I could see this being a heavy Chris Thompson type of game.
Yeah, if Chris Thompson's a guy right now, you got to play him every week because they get him the ball so many different ways, and he has the ability to break big runs. You don't want to touch Rob Kelly. He finally got in the end zone last week, but he seems to be getting hurt every game. P. Ryan has done nothing to win that job when he's had the opportunity. So, yeah, it's Cousins, it's Thompson, and probably a little else. I mean, Vernon Davis seems to make big plays when he gets the chance, and he's going to be the starting tight end going forward right now. So he's a guy I'd probably consider playing as well.
Agreed. I have him at tight end 4, so I'm with you on that one. All right, Kansas City Chiefs and the Dallas Cowboys will play at 4:25. This game is in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. Cowboys need a win, in my opinion. 4-3. They're not looking as good as they should. And Des Bryant's been hurt, but he's going to play in this one. Obviously, this is the first game without Ezekiel Elliott. I did not see. I believe there was a deadline tonight. I did not see whether or not he was reinstated, but I don't believe he was going to be. So I am under the impression, and moving along under the impression, that he will be out for the next 6 games. Alfred Morris and why can I never remember
Darren
McFadden's name? I have no idea why I always blank on him, but Darren McFadden will take over the running back duties in this one. What are you doing as far as who are you starting with these two?
Did you miss the announcement today?
I did.
The announcement today was the depth chart reads Alfred Morris, Rod Smith, Darren McFadden. So
I did see that. Again, those are...
Here's what... Yeah, I hear you. But you know what that says to me? I'm only starting Alfred Morris this week and nobody else, personally.
A lot of bye weeks. You don't think you'll throw McFadden in as a shot in the dark flex play?
No, I don't trust it. Like, he hasn't played, and I know that we've discussed this about the main backup not dressing, but just the fact that they named Morris the starter, and they've even dabbled in the fact that I think there will be touches by all 3 guys. I think Morris will get the bulk, and he's the only guy I'm trusting, and I'm not even superly trusting him this week, but I'm going to put him in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to throw him in there. I'm with you on Morris as far as this particular week. I am a little concerned that it's all, for lack of a better word, bullcrap. I get nervous because we've seen it before where a guy is inactive but then comes in. You just mentioned it, and I just think that's the possible situation. I also think that Alfred Morris has a good skill set as a shorter yardage back and a guy that can get you, run between the tackles very well, but he can't be used in the passing game. So I wonder if it's more of a game plan strategy to float out there that Alfred Morris is your guy, and then, the team, Kansas City, prepares for a guy like that, and then you see a lot more of McFadden than you're expecting. But so that's one thing that I am worried about. I think if I'm looking for a flex, I wouldn't be opposed to getting McFadden in there if you're kind of desperate and need someone. So let's talk a little bit.
Darren McFadden, Tyler Lockett, flex, go.
Lockett, no question about it. So, all right, Kansas City Chiefs side of the ball. Kareem Hunt's an every week start. I'm curious your thoughts about Alex Smith in this one. He's been pretty solid all year long. Is he an every week start at this point?
I mean, he's been as good as anybody. Like you said, he's stunned the hell out of me. I never expected that. As a guy in past years, I've just flat out said, you don't start him. It's Alex Smith. Well, he's having the best year of his career, in my opinion. And it's like I'm starting right now. If he was my quarterback on my roster, I don't have him anywhere because when it's time to draft, he wasn't a guy I was even considering. But I would have no problem rolling him out there this week.
All right, and in the passing game, the receiving, you're going to start Tyreek Hill. I don't know that I trust starting anyone else. Travis Kelce as a tight end, and that's about it. So I think that's it. We got to move on. We got to talk about the Sunday night game here. The Oakland Raiders are taking on the Miami Dolphins, and Sal, the Dolphins have a better record than the Raiders.
A lot of people have a better record than the Raiders. The Dolphins are just an odd team, man, because when they lose poor, they lose badly.
Yeah.
And then they win, they rip off a 3-game winning streak in there somewhere, and they're what are they, 4-3? Is that what their record is?
4-3, yeah.
I mean, the Raiders are not playing up to what we thought. They come out and beat a Chiefs team, and then they come out last week and just they look like they don't even belong on the field. It's disappointing as a Raider fan. Not shocking, but disappointing. And let's just hope we could get a win. Let's hope that we could beat a mediocre Miami team.
So with Jay Ajayi being shipped out and the Oakland Raiders giving up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs, it's between Damian Williams and Kenyon Drake. It seems like the fantasy community has rallied around Kenyon Drake being the guy. What are your thoughts on this backfield going forward?
And that was kind of the indication you got when Ajayi was traded that it would be Drake, but we know that Williams will be more of the pass-catching guy, but it does sound like it's going to be a split. There was, I believe, the offensive coordinator came out today. And again, more coach speak, more what do you believe. I'll have to wait till we get into a game. The Raiders have been able to be beaten on the ground, and I'm going to ask you a question because while we're on the air right here, my son texted me and he asked me this question: Marshawn Lynch or Kenyon Drake this week?
Ooh, that is an interesting question. I am very far down on Marshawn Lynch this week, so I actually think I would go with Kenyon Drake in this matchup. Like I said, I just said the Oakland has been giving up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs, and I don't know that I'm trusting Marshawn Lynch until I see something positive out of him. I think the rookies have been better than him, or rookies, I shouldn't say that. The second-year players, DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard, have been better than him. He's clearly been a problem. He's suspended for a game. He's coming back, and he didn't show up the first day he was supposed to. It's clearly been an issue. He had
a flat tire, man. Back off.
Yeah, I have him at running back 40. I have J.H.I. I have Kenyon Drake at running back 24. So I am much higher on Drake than I am on Lynch.
Yeah, I would have went with Drake also, and it pains me to have to say that, but I agree with you. And I admitted that Lynch was right now he's a bust. I put him at the end of the bench, and I leave him there, and let's see if he could turn it around because you don't want to give up on a guy like that. But I think that maybe they don't bring him back fully. So I'll tell you something. You're not watching this game here tonight. Earlier in this game, Zay Jones caught a nice touchdown. And right now, it looks like Zay Jones might be taken off the field and might miss the rest of the season.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. That's just it's piling up. Let's get through this before anyone else gets injured. Is there anything else? Obviously, Miami has been pretty effective against wide receivers in this, so far this season. Obviously, it's been well documented the struggles with Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper. I think these are both guys that you have to get in your lineup either way. Same thing for Derek Carr. In most weeks, I'm going to put him out there over a lot of other choices. So, but are you concerned at all? Are you taking any of these guys out of your lineup?
No, I'm going to hope that the ship gets righted here. We saw Cooper look really good in that game against Kansas City. Let's hope that we could see the Oakland Raider team the way we thought we would see it 8 wonderfully short weeks ago, and that all these guys who should be weekly weapons in your lineup return to being weekly weapons in your lineup.
All right, so that is it for this week. This week's preview of all the games. Obviously, we will talk about the Monday night game sometime next week. But for now, we don't have time for anything else. We are so far behind. Steve is going to be so angry when he gets to this file.
Love you, Steve.
Sorry, buddy. We appreciate all that you do for us. Sal, why don't you tell everyone where they can find us?
Yeah, real quickly, on all social media platforms, you can find us at Falafel House, FLAFFL House. And falafelhouse.com, where we have our gambling articles, our sink or swim, our waiver ads. We have something new almost every single day for you. Check us out. Me at Lido Sal on Twitter, Kevin at Wally Central, and Steve at Sid Skeet on the Twitter.
All right, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. I just want to remind you to check out the Gut Feeling Podcast. It is our sister podcast. It is released under this feed, so if you subscribe to us, you automatically get that for free, which is awesome, and those guys are doing great work. Sal will be on there coming soon to a podcast near you. I think our boy Tony, who writes for us on falafelhouse.com, will be on there this week, so definitely check that out when that comes out and rate and review those guys because they are awesome. I think that's it. We will be back on Sunday night. I believe all of us will be here, but you never know these days. So until then, I am going to go ahead and hit the button.